Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm with Monty Hamilton today. Monty is super interesting because he's CEO of Rural Sourcing. They're building software products in rural America. And he's been with the organization from like 10 people up to over 1,000, and he scaled that growth. And we've known each other for a very long time. He's been a fan of Grow Big before it was really Grow Big. And it's really fun to have him on the show for a couple reasons. One is he has scaled up that business like crazy, had a ton of success. And I think it's also interesting that he's just seen our growth over the last 10 or 15 years, which is really fun. In this episode, we dig into the moment when Monty realizes that sort of growth was something that he was interested in that business development and that some of the transformation and the various plateaus that he climbed over his career. Particularly in this episode, I want you to stick around to the end because he talks about a 3-step process of how to appreciate the problem. It's one of the most important things we can do in business development is not fall in love with our solutions, but fall in love with the problem that the client or the prospect has. And he gives a really distilled version of that near the end in 3 simple steps. But you got to listen to the beginning part to sort of know the context of that. So that's what you've got set up in this particular episode. It's really good stuff. Now, if you would like our best thinking every single week, Monty's a subscriber, loves it. You can sign up for our Grow Big playbook. I spend a couple hours writing what you can read in a couple minutes, giving you a nugget, something to put in place every single week when it comes to your growth skills. All you have to do to get that is go to growbigplaybook.com. All right, with that said, here's Monty Hamilton. Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Man, I'm with Monty Hamilton. Monty is the CEO of Rural Sourcing. They're completely redefining how people build projects, Monty, I'll let you say it, but how we, I don't want to say outsource, but tell us more about what you do.
Yeah, so we do essentially software product development, which a lot of companies do, but our human capital model is very different, I'll say. Instead of setting up shops in New York or San Francisco, we set our shops up in Middle America. So we've got locations in Oklahoma City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Mobile, Alabama, et cetera. And the whole concept here, Mo, is that, in today's age, if you want to be in technology and you want to write code and develop programs and products, you shouldn't be forced to make a trade-off between a location that you love, say Albuquerque in the high desert, and a vocation that you want to pursue. You should be able to do both right there in Albuquerque or Oklahoma City or Buffalo, New York, which is one of our newest locations. And so the idea is that, let's take advantage of this distributed labor model and let people live where they want to live. And we were doing this well before the pandemic, by the way.
Well, you sure were. Gosh, I've known you for over a decade. And one of the things I've always liked about you, Monty, is you are geared for growth. Like you are somebody who grabs a hold of idea and drives it forward. And I know you personally do that professionally and personally too. So take me back to the moment when you realized growth is a great thing. Maybe now as CEO, you don't think of it as business development, but you're in the business. I know you're in the business of selling ideas and getting people's buy-in and creating benefit for everybody involved. That's the way your brain thinks. So take me back in time, take me to the moment where you realized this kind of thing was something you wanted to do and walk us through that.
Yeah, Mo, I think, in reality, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do in life, right? I honestly, I've fallen into everything I've done. I just, luckiest guy in the world. I got into this consulting technology industry after business school. And the reality is I didn't know what I wanted to do after business school. And I had some interviews. I went to SMU in Dallas and some local interviews. And this good friend of mine who was living in Atlanta at the time, who I'd played football with in college, called me up and said, "Hey, Monty, and he's a super intense guy. He's, "Monty, what are you going to do after business school?" I go, I don't know, Tom. I'm not sure. There's a couple of job offers here. He goes, "Well, you need to come out and interview with us." I go, "Well, who is us and what does us do?" Right. And so He said, don't worry about it. Look, they'll fly out here. They'll put you up at the Ritz. They'll buy you lunch, or they'll buy you dinner. Just don't blow it. I'm like, okay, Tom, I'm maybe a little bit more help. But and so that company happened to be what's now known as Accenture, was Arthur Andersen Consulting back in the day. And so sure enough, I didn't blow it, Mo. I came out, first flight I'd ever taken as an adult, and had a suit and a white shirt, and I got through the interview miraculously somehow. But they didn't really know what they want to do with these MBAs. They hadn't really fleshed out the whole strategy part of their consulting yet. So they just said, look, you're going to go like everybody else. You're going to go to St. Charles, Illinois. You're going to learn how to program in COBOL. Well, that was a rude awakening for someone who had been training to be, a COO or a CEO, not a COBOL programmer. And so, with full irony today, I lead a company of 1,000 software developers and coders, right? And I was horrible at it, just horrible. I was surprised they didn't fire me, looking back today. But fortunately, business process reengineering and strategy came along, so I was able to morph into doing that stuff. And then I met a group of guys who we all liked each other and enjoyed what we were doing, and decided that we could do it out on our own, and we left and started what's now Clarkson Consulting, based out of North Carolina. And the business development moment there, Mo, I guess back to your question, was it was, I've been working on the road, traveling 100% of the time, 6 years, and had recently gotten married and were getting ready to start a family. And so the idea was, well, if you can sell work where you live, guess what? You won't have to travel as much. And so when you back yourself into a corner and say, if you want to be successful, this is what you need to do, then that's a great motivator to get out there and work hard and get it done. And so, fortunately, again, client that I worked with in the past was looking for some additional help. I let them know I was out on my own, and they said, great, when can you start on Monday? And so I fell into that as well. So it is just one, slip up and fall into another, I'll say, that's gotten me here.
Well, one thing that's interesting about that, Monty, and I think of the audience and what they can learn from that journey is a couple things. One is starting from a deep expertise is not a bad thing. Programming in COBOL, I can remember programming in Fortran as programming disability reserves, calculating disability reserves as an actuary in Fort Wayne, Indiana for Lincoln, the big insurance company. I realized I didn't want to do that, but it was a great, jumping in the deep end and trying to do really, really technical stuff is probably it's a good start. So secondly, it led you to where you are today as a CEO. Take me back into that moment at Clarkson, though, where you realized, okay, I've got to build a book of business because I'm highly motivated. Like you had a carrot on the back end, right? I can see my family more if I can build a book of business locally. So then what did you do? Like, how did you switch from, obviously you probably weren't coding at that time, but you're probably still doing highly technical stuff. How did you make that transition to actually building a book of business and constrained to a local market?
Yeah, so to me, this business all boils down to relationships, right? And I think that's something that you believe in. Oh, and by the way, I should have used Fort Wayne, Indiana as my example because we do have a center in your home area there, Fort Wayne. So next time,
I think that's awesome.
use
Yeah.
that example. And it's a great center. A bunch of awesome people who work there and want to live there and will raise their families there. So it's just a great spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it boiled back down to relationships, Mo, and people that I'd worked with or come across in the past, begin to let them know that, it was the same me that yesterday worked at Accenture that today works at Clarkson, and I still think I can help you solve your problems. And that worked, right? And I think being totally focused on helping someone tackle a problem. I've thought about sales I've made and sales I've not made. And if I went in with the idea that I got to sell this person something, more than likely I wasn't going to be successful at that. If I truly went in with the mindset of, I think I can help this person and I'm going to listen to their problem and I'm going to ask a bunch of great questions about their problem. I had a great mentor at Accenture who is on my board today, as a matter of fact, that he always would say, Monty, listen, you've got to spend an adequate amount of time appreciating the problem. Like, if it's an ordinary run-of-the-mill problem, they can get anybody to fix it. But if you can help them identify and really paint the picture of how big this problem is and how gnarly it is, but you know someone who might be able to help them out and solve that gnarly problem, then you're in the right room. So I think there's an important part of making sure you appreciate that problem, making sure that you really are walking in the door with that, how can I help this person mindset?
Yep. Monty, we're to some meat here that to some content I really want to dig into. And I'll preface it with this because you might be so I forget who came up with this, Cotter or somebody, that you might be so unconsciously competent in appreciate the problem at this stage in your life that you don't even realize what you do. But I want you to try to break it down. And if you had to pick 2, 3, 4 things that if you broke down this idea of, let's say somebody's listening and they're about to have a meeting tomorrow with a prospect or a potential client, and they're like, man, this thing Monty said, appreciate the problem, that really makes sense. How would you break it down and describe what you do to, air quotes, appreciate the problem to somebody else in like a couple steps or a couple ideas or concepts that come to your mind?
Yeah, there's maybe, 3 key things I would say, Mo. First of all, it's making sure that when you listen to them describe the problem, asking yourself and then asking them, is this a symptom or is this the problem? Right.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So
yeah.
Let's get down below what may be a symptom of what's happening and really understand the problem. The second one is, what are the upstream and downstream effects of this thing? It's not just that person you're sitting with that's impacted by this problem. It's going to be somebody that they either get information from or give information to that's also going to be impacted, typically, at least in my world, by those problems. And then I think the third thing is to understand from a personal point of view, what's in it for them, right? What if they're successful in solving this problem and coming up with this great solution and implementing a solution, what can they get out of it, right? And so I think if you approach it from kind of the mechanics up front of 1, is it a symptom or a problem? 2, what are the upstream and downstream impacts of that? And then 3, making it personal. What do they get out of this if they're successful and you help them be successful?
Monty, I think that's a mic drop moment. I think it's great. I think we should we're ending this one right here.
Listen, we'll just keep going. I just wanted to be in the Mo aura and that positive energy that you emit all the time. That's the only reason I agreed to do this. I mean, I just wanted to be part of it.
Well, audience, we're still live. We're gonna cover more later. So we got 4 more episodes coming up, audience. But Monty, people are going to want, the reason I said mic drop is those 3 things are just so great. I don't want to go off and blabber on and elaborate, say the same thing because they're really good. So we're going to end it there. But Monty, people are going to want to reach out to you. I know you've got your minute with Marty. Or Monty, Video Monty. Audience, thing number 1 to get right is call your guest by the right first name. No, minute with Monty. I know you've got your minute with Monty. You do on LinkedIn. You're really active on LinkedIn. I appreciate the content that you put out there. People are going to want to connect with you. Any other ways that people can say thank you for this episode or connect with you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, LinkedIn is by far the best way, Mo. I'm active on there, as you said, and would love to hear from folks if there are other ideas, share stories, or get to know and hear more about their individual stories.
That's awesome. In your minute with Monty, I believe you do that every week, right? You do.
It comes out every Monday morning, right around 8:30, and tune in. We try to give some useful advice and helpful insights out there. Whether it's about professional services, scaling a business, or just kind of occasionally personal, emotional growth stuff that we all can get reminded of.
I love it. Well, I'm a big fan. So everybody, you can find that super easily. We'll put Monty's LinkedIn link down in the show notes. That's easy. You can go that way. Or if you just want to search on Monty Hamilton, rural sourcing, the CEO will probably pop up right away. So Monty, man, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, Mo. Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Mo, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, episode 2 with Monty Hamilton, a CEO of Rural Sourcing, doing some amazing stuff domestically around coding, doing writing apps, like all kinds of different programming stuff done rurally in America. Monty's been at the forefront of that change, which is exciting. Monty, you are somebody that people want to follow. You're somebody that has been growing businesses your whole life. What's your personal definition of business development, or maybe even broadly growth in general?
Yeah, well, I think it's, for me at least anyway, it's about building the relationships. That's the fun part, right? I think when you and I first got to know each other, I know I had nothing to offer you at all, and you reached out and took me to a Georgia Tech ball game and introduced me to another gentleman that did end up doing some business with. And today, especially as I've found myself on the longer end of my career, that idea of just being valued to someone else
Yep.
is intrinsically rewarding. And I use your give to get early on. So we knew Mo before Mo was grow big, right? Before you grew big. And give to get was always in my vocabulary, right? From
Yeah.
day one when we first worked together. And I would say now, as I mature into this career, this job, that it almost is moving toward a give to give mentality, right?
Uh,
And that's not altruistic, not trying to throw a halo around my head, but it makes me feel good, right? And I like to feel good. And so if I feel like I can truly help someone at the end of the day, and you get a little thank you email or maybe even a handwritten note, people actually still do those these days, occasionally, it just is really rewarding. I'm super appreciative of that. So, for me, this definition of business development is really about relationship development, right? Can I create a truly transparent and authentic relationship with someone that, I care about their business, I care about their success, and maybe we can help each other, maybe we can't. But I get to know that person as an individual, then that's a good thing.
I like that a lot. It brought back an interview I did with Dory Clark. She's got a book that came out last fall called The Long Game. It's so good. It's so good. And she was on the show as she was sort of wrapping up the first draft of the book. And one of the ideas of The Long Game is for networking, and I'm putting air quotes around that, audio only listeners. What her view of networking is, and I love this, Monty, I think you do too, optimize for interesting. And she says, don't try to optimize for what you're going to get out of a relationship. If you do, people see it coming. It's sort of cheesy, look upon cheesy things like that. But when you mentioned that Georgia Tech event, I totally forgot about that. I just invited you that because I thought you were interesting. Just an interesting person, and we
Yeah.
hit it off. And I forgot with a great time we had. So I just think there's something around optimizing for interesting that parallels when it comes to networking, that parallels really nicely with your focus on relationship, giving first, and things like that. What's your approach to networking? And I'm just interested on your take on this.
Yeah, and first of all, I couldn't agree more with the optimizing for interesting, right? The worst thing in the world is go to a cocktail party or a dinner, and and you're just so focused on yourself and you and what you do, and you walk away there and you probably failed at having any sort of in-depth conversation or building a relationship. What is a lot more fun is to go there to see what you can learn and who you can meet
Yeah.
that's interesting. And again, everybody has a story, right? And to me, that is the fun part of networking, is getting to know someone. Throw the title away, throw the industry away. Who are they as an individual, and what makes them tick? And then you can walk away there and you go back home and say, "Hey, I met this really cool person tonight at this dinner," to your wife or your spouse or your partner, and say, "Let me tell you about them real quick," right? And so that then it becomes tangible and real, right? We've all gone to networking events and you walk away and you feel more deflated than inflated,
Yeah.
right? Because you went there with perhaps the wrong mindset, right? So
Yeah.
for me, it's getting to know back to your point of getting to know interesting people like yourself, that it makes life enjoyable, right?
I love that. So so I'm gonna throw you a curveball. And
All right.
it just popped in my mind as you were talking, because you're such a giving first person and you do it quite strategically. Now let's flip the script. What's interesting thing about having you on the show is not only you are sort of a growth leader and somebody who's inspiring change in people all the time. It's what you do. I've known you for a long time. I've seen you do it over and over again, both professionally and in your personal life too. Um, what's interesting for me is flip it now. Now you're now put on your normal day-to-day role. You're a CEO, and just with that title, a gazillion people are calling on you, right? They're trying to establish relationships with you. So now put yourself in the shoes of your normal day to day. You're the decision maker. What works well? Back to the idea of definition of business development. What works well for you in a first meeting when somebody's calling on you? They've got your attention enough. You're willing to take a half-hour meeting with you. What works from your side as people think about business development on Monty? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't thought about this ahead of time, so
I told you it was a curveball. It just popped in
off,
my head.
yeah, off the fly. I think it is. It's not always easy to communicate in an email or a voicemail, right? But it is. Here's something that, based on my knowledge of you and your business, so I've checked the box. I've done my homework, right? I
Yep.
know what you do. It's not call centers. It's not this. It's not that. It's building software products, right, in Middle America.
Yep.
Um, and then, because of I know that about you and what some other people who are in your industry are thinking about these days, I thought you might be interested in right?
Yep.
And so, therefore, now you have tried at least to think about my business. You've learned about my business. Now you want to at least try to help with that business and maybe share some insights that you gain from someone else. So it is giving. It's a little bit back to your give to get, right? I've
Yep.
invested some of my time and energy and intellectual cycles to develop something that could be interesting to you, could not, right? And I always prefer just my style, the little more laid back. This may or may not be helpful for you, Monty, but if it is, just let me know, and I'd love to have a conversation about it. If it's not, that's great. I'll continue to think about you and your business, and good luck to you, right? And to me, that is genuine. At least it comes across as genuine, right? And you've invested some of your own personal time and energy and efforts into hopefully making my business or what we do better.
And then, so this is really good. One of the things that we say in Grow Big Trading is, that if you've got something valuable and you deliver that offer of value, a gift to get in our parlance, in a highly personalized way, as warm as possible, then
Yep.
you've got a chance to meet anybody. And you just laid it out in a two-step process. Do your homework. This takes work. Like you can't just pick one thing and throw it at everybody. Like, it has to be highly personalized. To your point, you are building software products at a very high level at scale in rural America. Well, that's unique, right? That requires unique things. And then if somebody offered something of value to you. So let's say you get an email or a phone call or whatever, and you're like, I'd like to learn more. Now drop us into a first meeting. Now, again, you're the decision maker. The person's calling on you. The professional is with some kind of expertise, software, whatever it is, or advice is calling on you. What works well in a first meeting for you that might set up a second meeting? What are you evaluating in that first meeting that says, I'd like to meet this person again?
Yeah, I think out of the gate, if they've got some interesting questions and maybe a little angle on that question, right? Let's say, and we're all dealing with this today in this industry, retention, right? We're all
Mm,
talking about it, the great resignation, right? And so if they come at it and say, hey, Monty, I've talked to a bunch of other people in your position, and I know you aren't the head of people, you're not the chief people officer, but I was talking to this other CEO, and they're trying A, B, and C in kind of in these modes. Is that something that might be of interest to you or not? I'd be happy to introduce you to that CEO. I don't have all the insights that he does and whether it's working or not. But so now again, you've helped me maybe think a little differently about that retention problem, right? And then on the back end of that, somewhere there's got to be an ask for your company. And, yeah, we're working with that other CEO to help him do, B out of those three things. We don't really do
Yep.
A very well or C very well, but we really do well B really well. That's a conversation that, again, I find very helpful. I've used a lot. I like to say, honestly, here's what we don't do, right?
Oh, I like that.
If that's what you're looking for, I may be able to help you find people or organizations that do exactly that, but that's not what we do, right? And there's just so much credibility gained when you're willing to say, no, that's, I could do that for you, but you wouldn't know the difference between me and 700 other firms that look like us, right? But if I could do this for you, that's where we really shine.
Well, there's so much to unpack there. What I loved about what you shared in the meeting is two big things. One is come in with some interesting, customized, tailored questions that show, it's not just what I'll tell you what not to do. Tying back to your last point, what keeps you up at night, Monty? Like when somebody comes in and just asks this blanket question that they could ask anybody on the street, like it just doesn't land well. Like it's not tailored. But if somebody comes and says, "Hey, I was digging into your website and that article you did was such and such, and that interview that you were on this other show, and I heard you say X. Well, would it be helpful if we did Y?" So thing one was interesting questions that show you did your homework, and thing two, offer some value. And I loved your examples, Monty, because the value doesn't have to necessarily be your product or your solution. It can be an introduction to somebody else, like you said. And so comment on this. This will be a great potential close for this episode is sometimes we'll say a lot is the goal for a first meeting is to get a second meeting. And by having that mindset, it takes it away from trying to close a deal or get somebody to say yes to your product or offering or whatever. That's typically too fast, too far too fast. But rather, if you're offering value in any way possible that the first meeting turns into a second meeting, that's a beautiful thing. So just and whether that involves our services or not from the people that are calling on you. So what are your thoughts around this idea of a goal of a first meeting is to get a second meeting and just trying to find something of value that the person would say, I would love to do that.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Mo. I think, I would add to that, the goal is to get that second meeting and expand my audience, right?
I like
if
that.
you're calling on me, there's no functional areas here that I make decisions about, right? There are people that do that I work with and we collaborate together on. I'm never going to make that decision about that retention model that someone pitched me, right? I'm going to bring in the right people and we'll debate it and go back and forth. And so if I can get that second meeting and get you to bring along the person who may be responsible for that particular issue or topic, now I've really got some momentum going forward, right? And I think that's critical. And just on the other point, if I can revisit for a minute the idea of walking in with questions. When I first got into the consulting world, I remember one of my partners talking to me about the best way to make a huge impact in a meeting is to have interesting questions. They're not looking for you to give them the answers. You don't know enough yet to give any answers. But if you have some good questions, they will walk out there and go, that guy was pretty smart. He had some unique perspectives and he listened a lot, right? And he took notes, right? And so I think those are kind of the goals of that first meeting is to give that good impression, that desired outcome of I'd like to follow up on these things with you again. And I took a bunch of notes and I've got it to do. And let's see if we can get together again with the other people in your organization that care about this topic.
Monty, it's great. That's the perfect ending for this. And audience members, if you like this idea, if you happen to drop into this episode first, make sure you go back and watch or listen to the prior one where Monty talks about falling in love or appreciating the problem, not necessarily falling in love with their own solutions. Because I think these two tie nicely together. So, hey, Monty, people are going to want to connect with you. I know you're really active on LinkedIn. Your Minute with Monty that you come out with every Monday is really cool. How should people connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just search me out on LinkedIn and shoot me a direct message there or connect. Love to hear from your audience and folks who may have different ideas or opposing ideas or better ideas.
I love it. And so, folks, all you have to do if you're barreling down the highway, just remember, search for Monty Hamilton. You can type in rural sourcing or CEO of rural sourcing or anything like that. We'll also put the specific link down in the show notes too. And everybody, don't forget, follow, subscribe, set up those notifications because we got 3 more awesome episodes coming up with Monty next. Monty, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Mo. My pleasure.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. 3rd episode out of 5 with Monty Hamilton. Monty's the CEO of Rural Sourcing. They're doing some amazing stuff in software development in rural America, and it's just awesome. It fires me up, especially because I grew up in a small town of 80 people in Indiana, and the way Monty and Rural Sourcing are breeding high-level jobs to locales that sometimes don't have enough of them, super cool. So, Monty, question for episode 3. What's when you think about Grow Big Training, Snowball System, our weekly content we put out in our Grow Big Playbook, what's your favorite thing of anything?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to have to complain just a little bit because you eat up a good chunk of my Saturday mornings, and I delay a workout just so I could, tune into the Snowball podcast. But no, for me, Mo, and this honestly is, the blueprint of this business that we're living by, which is think big, start small, and scale, right? And I think that's the first chapter in your book. And honestly, so when we started this business, it was 10 people in a tin shack in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And today we're 1,000 folks across 10 different centers. And but from the very beginning, I always had this idea of rural 3,000, right? So 3,000 folks, 30 centers across the U.S. That was our target, right? And even in very, very extremely humble beginnings, that's in my head what I thought, right? And we're not there yet. We're still working toward it. We're about 1/3 of the way, but I think we've made some good progress, and we are in that snowball now that's rolling downhill, and we couldn't be happier with where we are and how things are going.
Oh, I'll be on the web or something like that, and I'll see. I forget, I emailed you once like a year ago or something. You had got these huge accolades, and like Rural Sourcing is just crushing it, and it's such a unique business model. And I'm like, I stumbled upon that independently of knowing you. Like, it wasn't on your LinkedIn feed. You know what I mean? I'm like, I felt such pride, in what you're doing. So let's break this down. Think big, start small, scale up. So audience, this is one of our mantras we think about with anything. It's about, we can use that when we're scaling up a growth mindset across a multi 10,000 person organization. We can think about it personally when we're trying to get better at something. Because in business, a lot of times what somebody will do is they'll get an idea and they expect themselves to do it with 100% fluency and perfection right away. And it's just not, it just doesn't work. And a lot of times great intentions will completely collapse because we try to do too much too fast. So I'm going to flip it back to you, Monty. You've done this so well. When I think of 10 people in a tin shack to 1,000, when you think about think big, start small, scale up, specifically when it comes to business development, what's your advice to somebody on how they tackle it? And if you want to go broader and think about how you've led the whole organization, that's fine too. Or I guess my broader question is, tell me how do you break down think big, start small, scale up yourself? What advice do you have to others? Anything in that realm?
Yeah, I think the first thing, Mo, is to recognize you as an individual, I as an individual, will never be able to do it all. I might, and now that I've got the benefit of some hindsight, I thought I was pretty good at business development, and then we hired some really good professional business development folks, and I realized I wasn't very good after all. I've got a chief revenue officer who I ran sales at one point in time here. When you're small, you do everything right. And I thought I was pretty good at it. And now I realize with the benefit of a professional in that role, wasn't very good at it, right? And so I think it's being humble enough and recognize that you have limitations. And if you want to get beyond those personal limitations of trying to do everything great, then you're going to have to bring other people into the tent with you. right? You're going to have to be willing to go out there and hire those folks who are professional business development people and know what they're doing and have a system and a process and some success and some history of success. I think that's critical. And whether it's in sales or it's in HR or in IT, you just can't do it all yourself. And so I think recognition of that early on helps you to begin to scale and to bring those right people along. And your point I love, right, is that you're not going to be perfect on day one or day 10,001, right? It's a process, and it's one of our core values here is continuous improvement, right? I like to say we're pleased, not satisfied, right? And if you have that mindset and that idea that, yeah, this is great, but we can do better, we can get bigger, we can do more, then I think it'll continue to drive you down that path of scale. I have a great board member here who, regardless of where we are in our milestones, and I'll talk to him about, we did this, we reached this particular milestone, we, have our first, our fifth center back when he first joined the board. He goes, so Monty, let me ask you a question. Is it harder to open up the fifth center, you think, than it's going to be to open up the sixth? I go, well, Mike, it was definitely harder on the fifth. We've learned a lot now. It's going to be better on the sixth. He goes, great, let's go for the number 6 then, right? And so you're continuously thinking about it was harder then, so I know I can do the next step, right? And sometimes you're making up those steps as you go along, and you figure them out, and it does get easier as you continue to scale things up. But you can't get complacent with it.
Well, let's get personal. So I love the idea of pleased, not satisfied. I mean, that's awesome. I want to you've grabbed Think Big, Start Small, Scale Up from us. By the way, we grabbed it from somebody else. But pleased, not satisfied. I'm grabbing that from you. I really like that. So one of the other mantras we use a lot is you have to cut to climb. Because to your point, you only have so much time. We all have the same exact amount of time. And if we want to be laddering up our impact on the world, by definition, to climb up to that next metaphorical run, we have to take our foot off the bottom so we have to cut to climb. So when you think about the stages in your life from, in our first episode, you talked about starting at Arthur Andersen, coding in COBOL, all the way now up to CEO of a company that scaled up to 1,000 people and growing bigger by the day. Where have been the areas where you needed to cut sooner, or you could have climbed faster, or how do you go about thinking about it? Just give us some of your mindset around this idea of you have to cut to climb.
Yeah, Mo, I would say I've made so many mistakes and missteps along the way that I'll go back to thinking about truly, honestly looking yourself in the mirror and saying, am I doing this the best possible way? Or is there someone else out there who could probably do this better, right? And we're a frugal company. As I mentioned before, we started from humble beginnings of 10 people in a 10 shack, right? And so we do care about how we spend our money. But there are times looking back now where I was too close-minded about what someone might be worth, especially a good business development person, that we tried to cut corners there, and it didn't work out, right? I think you pay for quality in this business, and if you're willing and able to do that, you'll get quality. If you try to cut corners and make something work, the chances of success are very, very low, right?
Yep.
And I think that having that mindset of being willing to invest in the business, take those profits, those gross profits, and plow them back in to continue to do better, and recognize that you're to your point, you're taking your foot off that bottom rung, but it's going to enable you to step up to the next one because you're reinvesting, right? That's critical across every facet of this business. I have a person that I started this business with, Ingrid Curtis, who is our president, and she and I have been along every step of the way. We complement each other very well in terms of I know very well what she's great at, which is, 100 things, and I'm maybe good at one. And so it's important, I think, again, to know where where you can really add the value, and then where you can enable other people to help you climb up that rung and continue to scale.
Yeah. I heard something this weekend and it struck me. And this person said a quote, "Don't save me any money, I can't afford it." And I thought that was such a great quote. Don't save me money, I can't afford it.
Oh, that's
And that goes for time too, I think. So one last question this episode. I'd love you to give advice to others. You've started as a deep technical expert yourself, a coder yourself, back in COBOL. Audience,
a very bad one, Mo.
Well,
I wouldn't have hired myself today. That's for darn sure.
Well, but from those humble beginnings, you've become an expert, you've become a business developer, you've become a leader of business developers, you become a CEO of an entire organization. So quite a climb. The three big stair step levels we see when it comes to business development are and generally this is true across account management, business professionals, everything. In general, bringing in enough getting to fluency where you bring up enough business you can sort of pay for yourself. That's level one. Level two, that you now know systems and processes. We've got some great ones in Snowball System, Grow Big Training, but there's lots out there where somebody can scale those across a team. That's level two. I can now coach others to bring them up, either typically through systems or mentoring that I can bring them up. I can run a whole team. Level three is now I can now scale those across a large organization. So say like if we just do orders of magnitude, the first level is I can add enough value, I can keep myself busy. Level two, 10x. I can now add enough value, I can keep 10 people doing what I used to do. 100x, an order of magnitude higher. I can now scale those systems across an organization to do that. And this ties back to our cut. You have to cut to climb because the skills you need at each one of those three levels, completely different skills.
Right.
So what's your advice to somebody that's at one of those levels looking for another, or how do they go about assessing from a business development perspective how they can how they should think about where they're at one to go to the other, or anything you want to go grab onto in that area, give it to me. I know this is a curveball. I know you're not prepared for this. I can't wait to see what you say.
No, I think the first thing that I would say to those individuals looking to get to that next level, again, sort of understand where you are, understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and you really only get good insight into that is when you're willing to ask your peers, your bosses, your friends, and your acquaintances, hey, how am I doing here, right? And be honest with them, right? I want to do this. And listen, it was one of the things I learned early on at Accenture was ask for feedback. People are happy to give it to you. Sometimes you may not like to hear it, but they're normally happy to give it to you. And then if you find that person who's happy to give it to you because they want you to be successful, then you found a great mentor, right? And those are invaluable, right? And and the other thing I would add, so that's one is, ask people for that feedback, honest feedback. Two, Mo, would be to do your research, read as much as you can, right? There's not a topic out here today that someone hasn't written a good book on. There's probably 1,000 books, and there's probably a few that are really good that can help you understand what am I asking for? What am I searching for? What am I trying to get to? And then that can help me lay out a plan to be able to do that. I think those are kind of two key things of asking for that feedback and then, just getting smarter on what you're looking for.
I love that. So in essence, there's a 3-step process there. Know where you're at, ask for feedback, figure out where you're at, force somebody to give it to you straight, find those mentors, step one. Step two, research, lay out a plan. I think the fastest way to get promoted is just start acting like you do that job, right? Like start digging in, being helpful in that area, show people you can do it. And then 3, lay out that plan and figure out how to do it.
Sometimes when you do that research, you may find out that's not really what I want. I thought I wanted that, but I don't really want to be responsible for 10 other salespeople. I like carrying a bag. I like having a quota. I like competing one-on-one and winning or losing, and that immediate feedback versus 10 people now who are going to rely on me to help them be successful. And we both know people who thrive in one area and may not be so good in that next one.
Yeah, that's right. And if you do find out that, that's great, right? Because now you can double down on the role you're at. Well, Monty, this has been awesome. If you people are going to want to connect with you, I know you do a minute with Monty every Monday morning on LinkedIn. What are some ways they can connect with you? Is that the best way?
Yeah, just type in Monty Hamilton. Nice thing about having a unique first name. I think there's one other in Australia that I'm aware of. He and I are connected on LinkedIn. But if you put rural sourcing at the end of that, you're most likely going to get my profile. And I would love to hear from your listeners out there on what they think.
Yeah, audience, what Monty does is every Monday he has a really short video that he puts out on LinkedIn, and it's always got something interesting in it. So you can do that by connecting. We'll put Monty's link to LinkedIn down in the show notes too. So you can either do the search method or you can do the cheat method. We'll give it straight to you.
Cool.
Monty, thanks for being on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mo. I've enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. This is the fourth of 5 episodes with Monty Hamilton. He's CEO of Rural Sourcing, doing some super, super cool stuff around programming and providing jobs and opportunities in rural areas for deep technical coders and experts writing software. And Monty's doing some super cool things. And in this episode, we're going to dig into, and Monty, I'm going to pin you down on this. We're going to dig into a business development or a growth story that Monty's particularly proud of. So, Monty, with that background, give it to us. Tell us a story, something around business development or growth that you are personally proud of.
Yeah, Mo, I think the biggest moment, or the one I guess I would be the most proud of, and again, it's not me as an individual. This is a big company here now with a group of people who are all participating in this. But 3 years ago, we sold a stake in our business to Bain Capital, and specifically their double impact social impact fund.
Oh,
And so while it's not a go do the work kind of business development, it was going out there and doing business development, right? Building relationships, getting someone to believe in your mission, your vision, and your story, and frankly, funding that, right? And we've more than doubled our size since they came in. But the interesting story behind this, Mo, is that we're going through, and these are a bunch of really smart private equity analysts and folks who, know how to crunch the numbers, and they had done a good job of this. And I kept reminding them along the way. I would say, I think you're going to like what you see in the numbers and the forecasts and those things, but you're really not going to get to know the business until you come visit one of our centers. And we kept going along in the process, and I got to know them better, and they got to know me better. But I kept reminding them, like, look, you really need to understand and see and feel the culture, and I can't describe that for you. You gotta come see it. So toward the end of the process, they agreed to come visit in our center in Mobile, Alabama. This was before we had Fort Wayne, Indiana. Otherwise, I would have brought them up to your home state.
as you should have. Right,
Yes.
exactly.
But we agreed to meet in Mobile. They flew down from Boston. I met them here in the Atlanta airport. And the them in this case was 2 of their managing partners and the founder of the fund, who is a gentleman by the name of Deval Patrick, which may sound familiar to some of your listeners. He was the former governor of Massachusetts, the first black governor of Massachusetts, and he was the founder of this fund. And so he shows up, unbeknownst to me, at the airport as well. And I'd met Governor Patrick in the past. Wonderful, wonderful human being, just amazing person. So we travel to Mobile, we land down there, we get to the rental car agency, and I go there all the time, so they know me by name. They, oh, Mr. Hamilton, we've got your car here for you. Well, this time I show up, and they say, oh, Mr. Hamilton, we're so sorry you reserved this car, and keep in mind there's 4 of us now, but we don't have it for you, and we're sold out of those. But we do have a replacement car that should work for you. And I go, okay, sure. What is it? And she goes, well, it is a brand new, shrink wrap still on the grill, Dodge Ram crew cab pickup truck. And so I turned to look at my Bain Capital buddies who've all flown in from Boston and have their Harvard MBAs. Like, Welcome to rural sourcing, guys. So we do that, and that's not the end of the story. We do that. We go to the center. It was a wonderful visit. Deval Patrick was so engaged. I've never seen someone who can ask questions and lean in so well to listen to what people are telling them, why they work here, and why they like working here, etc. And just a fantastic visit. We get ready to go back to the airport because we had a meeting with the rest of the board here in Atlanta that evening, dinner meeting. And so as we're driving to the airport, all of our phones buzz and go off all at the same time. We get alert from Delta Airlines that our flight had been delayed. So I pull over to the side of the road, driving, and former Governor Patrick sitting in the back seat, and I turn around and said, Governor Patrick, my experience with this flight is that once it's delayed once, we won't leave here until 7 or 8 o'clock tonight, and we'll miss our dinner. He said, okay, well, I said, well, we have one other option. It's a 5-hour drive, and when we leave right now, we'll be perfectly on time for dinner at Blue Ridge Grill. He goes, all right, get out. I'll take the first shift. And so, Mo, I got the benefit of spending 5 hours in a car listening to former Governor Patrick talk about working with the Defense Fund and doing a case in Alabama, and got to know him personally. And it was just a fantastic visit, right? And I say all this to really get to your point of question. You're going to be thrown curveballs, no matter how well you plan things, no matter how well you practice and rehearse and put together your deck, you're going to get curveballs. And the test of how well you can do is, can you hit that curveball, right? Can you step back, be situationally fluent, right? Understand where you are and make adjustments on the fly. And in sales, you're going to have that all the time. You're going to have those situations that you didn't necessarily plan for. Yeah. And if you can take them in stride, play the hand that you get dealt, and come out on the other side, I think that your audience would find that they win more often than they lose in those cases where they take those initially what would seem like big curveballs or obstacles and deal effectively with them, because people notice that and appreciate that.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes I'll ask this follow-up question in this particular episode, the personal story one. And I want you to just just be like super transparent with us on this one. And here's the question. When you think about that whole process, probably specifically maybe the moment when the alerts went off on your phone about Delta, and you think about you personally, what are you personally proud that you did?
I think I'm personally proud that I was Monty, right? That regardless of the fact that I could have been and certainly was impressed, maybe not intimidated by Bain Capital, right? And all these Harvard MBAs, that I knew we have a great company, and we believe in our mission and what we're doing, and the idea that I was comfortable. Some of this just comes, Mo, with age. I think you and I both know this, right? That you get comfortable in your own skin. And you're able to say, this is who I am. And that's okay if you don't like that or agree with that or maybe don't want to hang out with that. But it's Monty, and that's who I am. And I think when we're our own authentic selves, then most people are going to respond well to that. And it gives you a confidence in these business development situations, whether you're selling your company or whether you're selling the next deal, that is attractive to folks. That you have a confidence that, okay, this person believes in who they are and what they do and what their company stands for, and I want to be associated with folks who are like that.
Yeah, Monty, let's run with this for a little bit, because that hit me really hard in a really good way. I think sometimes as in business development, we can get our mind fixed. We can have sort of like a fixed mindset around, I think I can achieve X in this meeting, whatever it is, right? I think I can do it. Anybody can do it. And then if something's not marching towards X, we get dismayed or, go out, get off our game or whatever. But to your point, if we can be our true authentic self and think, I'm okay if they choose me or not, I'm okay, whatever happens, that lowers the bar, it lowers the pressure, and actually can help us be more authentic if we're not connected to this outcome that we have in our mind. If we can separate ourselves from the outcome and just focus on being helpful, again, to the point you made in the first couple episodes, then it lowers the bar way down and probably can help us perform even better. So I know that's a bit conceptual, but your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree. I think I go back to saying that if I act in an authentic way and I let you know who I am and what I care about and what I stand for, and likewise what my company stands for, and you're not attracted to that, that's okay. We're not going to be for everybody. We're not a one size fits all. But if you are, somebody now knows exactly what they're buying,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be disappointed. The worst
Yeah.
thing you can do is go in and paint this picture of something that you're not and something that you really can't do very well, and that person buys it. They're going to be disappointed. They're not going to be a repeat customer. They're not going to be a reference for you. And that's 10 times worse than having gone in and said, I can't help you with that problem, or this is how we address it. And if you don't want to address it that way, that's okay. We don't have the only solution in town, right? And I think that's just such a much better outcome. And to your point, which I love, is that it takes the stress off, right? I don't have to be anybody else. I don't have to pretend, right? I don't have to be a poser, right? This is what we do and how we do it. And, there's a lot of people that do like it. Look at our customer list. Maybe not you, but hope it's you. And I think that's it's just a much better, easier, more comfortable way to do business.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Monty. And if I tie that conceptual back to the story you told of, you could have easily felt an immense amount of pressure, right? This is a potential investor in the company. It's the biggest sale there is, in a way, is to have PE money come in or have an investor or things like that. And the fact that you were able to retain the I was Monty throughout the process is really cool. And they probably did want to be a part of it even more. And I think that's really neat. Any last words of wisdom?
If you have an opportunity like that, I would say get them in a Dodge crew cab pickup truck, drive 5 hours somewhere, and see if you like each other at the end of it.
That's a great way to do it. So did you call some of your friends at Delta Airlines and cancel the flight? Is that how you got it?
I did not have any foresight into that one. That was one of those obstacles and curveballs that you got to roll with and figure out how you can make the best of a bad situation, perhaps.
That's awesome. The whole pickup truck in Alabama, the whole thing, you couldn't make it up.
It definitely goes in the book someday, Mo. It's one of my best stories.
I love it. Well, Monty, people are going to want to connect with you. I know you put out some great content on LinkedIn. Tell us about it and how they can connect.
Yeah, so if they want to check out Minute with Monty, a little branded thing that we do every Monday morning, somewhere between 8 and 8:30 on LinkedIn. Just Google Monty Hamilton at Rural Sourcing or Rural Sourcing, and I should pop up. I'm active out there on LinkedIn, and would love to hear from you, and love to have you, tune in to the Minute with Monty's on. It takes a minute, literally, and so it won't take up much of your day.
I love it, and we'll put that down in the show notes, everybody. So if you don't, if you know how to do that, just scroll down to the show notes and click the link, and you'll be connected right with Monty. Monty, thanks for being on the show. This has been great. And audience, don't forget to follow, subscribe, set up those notifications. We got one more episode left with Monty Hamilton, and I know it's going to be great. Thanks, Monty.
Thank you, Mo.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Last of 5 episodes with Monty Hamilton, CEO of Rural Sourcing. And we just had a great time. The prior 4 episodes, everybody, just been awesome, talking about how Monty views business development as authentic, very relationship focused, long-term in mindset. We've had some great content. So if you're dropping in for this one because it's awesome, make sure you go back and watch or listen to the other ones too. Monty, in this episode, we're going to close with this. If you could record a video and send back to your former self, something around business development, a growth mindset, something like that, what would you record? What would you say to your younger self?
Oh, good luck, son. No, I think, Mo, it would start with think bigger, right?
Oh,
don't settle. I think oftentimes, I look back on my career now and I didn't have maybe that abundance mentality, and I didn't think about what all the possibilities were. Second thing I would tell them is to take more risk. It's okay to fail. You're going to at some point in time, maybe a lot of times, but take some more risk, right? Don't be so risk averse. The other thing I would tell them is to try. I try to remind myself even of this today daily, and I don't do a great job of it. But try to enjoy the journey a little more,
yeah.
right? We get so fixated oftentimes on the goal, whether it's a sales quota goal for the year or for the quarter, or a career goal over a longer period of time, that we forget or get lost in the journey, right? And if all you're doing is checking off the milestones and there's not some fun and some enjoyment in between that step and the next one, I just think life's just not going to be as fun as it ought to be, right? And so I try to remind myself. I don't always do a good job of that, but I would certainly remind my younger self to do that.
Yeah, I want to dig into that enjoy the journey because I think I'm at fault with this too, that I can get all wound up about how certain thing isn't going absolutely perfectly, even when it's going well, and I can like get crazy about it. But I try to have little mechanisms to celebrate things daily, weekly, stuff like that. What do you do personally to enjoy the journey? Like, how do you make sure you're enjoying the daily wins, the weekly wins, and so on?
Yeah, I will confess, Mo, that I think the pandemic has made that harder
Yeah.
by not having people around you all the time, where you can have those impromptu celebrations. They don't have to be big, glamorous events, with five-star, dinner reservations. It can just be nice moments, right? And it's more difficult to do that when you're in your home office, or maybe you're the only one in the Atlanta office today, right? But the other side of that coin is the fact that I try not to take those things for granted anymore, right? I told someone recently, I didn't realize how good I had it. When you put 150 software developers in a building 5 days a week in Fort Wayne, Indiana, all this great organic stuff just happens, right? You don't have to work at it. They figure it out. And now we have to be a lot more intentional about creating those moments, not just for me, but for our teams, right? Our developers, our leaders, so that they can experience joy in the journey, right? And have a good time along the way. And so we're trying to create more of those moments now. But as I said, we just have to be more intentional about them. But yeah, I think that's important. But in terms of what I do with my team today, we still, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had, daily at the time Zoom meetings. Now we still have twice a week, right? Regardless of where anyone is, we all jump on a call on Monday afternoon and Thursday afternoon, and we talk about what happened over the weekend. Sometimes, a lot of times, that's how we start the conversation, so that we can experience each other's life outside of work. And then we talk about on Thursday, we kind of end that one with, what are you going to do for the weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fun for me, even though we can't always hang out. Sometimes we do. But it's fun for me to hear what other folks are doing. And I think that helps us at least try to enjoy the journey a little more.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, a resurgence of this across our client base. It's almost as if the higher performing an individual in a team or an organization is, the less they celebrate success. You know what I mean? Like we only celebrate when we win the big deal, as opposed to the 100 little steps it took to get there, and celebrating the effort and people stretching outside their comfort zone and some kind of incremental win or advancement. And I'm seeing more people these days try to make it more intentional, like you're saying, like starting off team meetings with just 5 minutes of, hey, what wins did you have this
Right.
week? Having a meeting that's unstructured just to chat. Almost like the meeting before the meeting that used to happen outside the conference room while you're waiting somebody to tidy up their stuff and you're chit chatting about the weekend. Like having just a 15-minute call with somebody, just a chit chat and not have a structured agenda. Like, what other things are you seeing basically to celebrate optimism and gratitude? Those are two things I've seen in the research lately that correlate to high performance and deep satisfaction at work. Optimism, sharing just any little thing we're optimistic about, gratitude, saying thank you for a job well done, or excitement for an incremental step. Just what are some more really practical things you're seeing work?
Yeah, so one of the things that so I would mention or will mention at the end of this that I do a minute with Monty on LinkedIn
Yeah.
to share some things that I'm thinking about or it's going on in the news or scaling a business, et cetera, et cetera. But I also do one internally on my own Slack channel here. And that one's a little more personal. That one's, the family only, right? And that's where I do share, Mo, a lot of, hey, we had this great team effort this week. This team met this huge milestone and allowed our clients to launch a new product on time and generate more revenue, et cetera. And so I try to do more of that on that internal basis. And frankly, maybe it's just, again, old age, but being a lot more vulnerable, right? With what's going on in my life sometimes, right? We all, because we're humans, we have ups and downs, and we have, significant others who, pass away and things like that. And to be able to share that with, I think, our audience and internally here is good. There's lots of always good comments afterwards, right? We have, March 14th is Pi Day, right? And so on Pi Day, there was nobody in the office here, so I had my son pie me in the face. I think that's got the most comments and the most likes of any of them because he enjoyed it way, way too much, Mo. I mean, it almost took my glasses completely off my face. So it was a good one. But I think doing things like that to share that we are humans, right, and that we have emotions and we appreciate certain things. Some days I'll be up early and maybe I'll be on a run and share a sunrise, right, as a part of my internal minute with Monty. And things like that. So we're trying to do those things that, and substitute for what we used to be able to get in person.
Yeah, this is really good. And those are really great ideas. I just feel like more than any time it seems like that I can remember, doing these little things like this can be highly motivational and tie people together because we all need it. So Monty, awesome. Well, you mentioned it, but go deeper. So how can people connect with you and get that minute with Monty, the external version? We'd like to see the pie in the face version, but we realize that's just for rural sourcing people. But how do people at least get the external version?
Yeah, so if you just go to LinkedIn and type in Monty Hamilton, if you want to make sure you get the right one, there's another one down in Australia somewhere that we know each other and LinkedIn together. Type in rural sourcing behind it. You'll pull me up there and click on that and follow. Every Monday morning, rain, snow, like the mailman, we post that Monday morning minute with Monty between 8 and 8:30. Doesn't take up much time. Literally try to keep it to a minute, 90 seconds at the most, just to give you something to think about. And would love to have some of your audience to tune into that and follow that page.
That's awesome. Well, audience member, please connect with Monty, shoot him a DM on LinkedIn, let him know you enjoyed the episode, connect with him, grab that minute with Monty every single week. Monty, thanks for being on the show. This has been a blast. I know our audience has gotten a lot out of it. I really appreciate it.
Mo, thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, I did this just because I wanted to be in the kind of Mo aura and positive energy world. So if I had to do a podcast with you to get that, I appreciate that very much. Always love being a part of what you're doing and what's going on in your world.
Yeah, what you're doing at Rural Sourcing is truly phenomenal. To go from 10 people to over 1,000 on your way to multi-thousands to have an impact on Fort Wayne, Indiana, near where I grew up. It's really cool what you're doing. So keep doing it because you're not only impacting all those 1,000+ employees, but then all the clients that you've got. It's pretty cool. Thanks, Monty.
Thank you, Mo. Appreciate it.